The Mounties were the first fittings. We had to do rentals on this one. That's the one thing which we don't do on When Calls the Heart. So we actually had to have the handmade costume. It was the first time we were actually dressing background before we were dressing cast. I wanted it to be as far away from When Calls the Heart as possible.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Heart in Motion podcast. I'm thrilled to welcome back to the podcast Barbara Gregusova. How are you doing, Barbara?
I'm good, thank you.
You're surviving right now?
Kind of.
So, for those of you that don't know, Barbara is not only the costume designer for When Calls the Heart, but she is also the costume designer for Hope Valley 1874. So, you guys have wrapped up, but that doesn't mean your job has wrapped up. Is that right?
Actually, I officially wrapped up on Friday,
Okay.
but I still have stuff I have
You
to do.
still have stuff to do.
Yeah, there's, yeah, like, yeah, you have to do like the petty cash and make sure all the accounts are closed, like rentals. And also, we have to clean up, or I have to clean up a little bit more of the office because I cannot really leave it the way it is.
Do you use the same office for both projects?
Oh, wait, I think I didn't press OK. So, did it record it or no?
Um,
Because I forgot that I have to approve it.
nope, I'm good. It's recording.
You're good? Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Okay. Um, yeah, we are using the same office for both of the projects. So
Yeah.
basically, the plan is to resume the cleaning once the Van Calls the Heart 14 is back, which is quite hard for my brain because then I have to leave the office in a state it is right now, and I kind of just have to walk away from the mess.
Yes.
I'm just like, it's not really my personality to just like, leave the
Yeah.
things the way they are.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like the 1874 is wrapped up like, the way it's supposed to be, but just the office is basically a mess because we overlap the wrap and the prep for the shows.
Yeah.
And it's like, the fabrics we want to put in all the boxes. So I still need to put some fabrics in the boxes because I don't want them to get dusty over the, 3 months of break. And we also had a mouse at one point. So I don't really want the mouse to decide to make a, kind of like a circus out of there. All the fabrics are a mess. So yeah.
Okay, so you shift gears like on a dime and go from When Calls the Heart to Hope Valley 1874. What would you say is the biggest difference in wardrobe between those two projects?
But it's definitely more greedy and dirty.
You have to
Really
do a lot more
dirty.
multiples when the weather is as crazy as it is.
We can't.
You the budget, right?
It's sometimes not even in the budget as much as there is not the manpower to do it.
Oh, yeah.
There's
Got it.
no manpower, there is no time. I mean, the time is usually the hardest because we don't like, like on Van Close the Heart or even 1874, we don't have months and months and months of prep, which they do get on other TV shows, right? So,
Yeah.
like on Van Close the Heart, I had what, 5 weeks of prep, and on 1874, since they pushed to shoot, we got more prep, which was super lucky. But we had cast super late. Like the casting on 1874 was so late that it was the first time we were actually dressing background before we were dressing cast. So that was like a big challenge because, like we didn't know who is going to be our Tom. We actually didn't know like none of the cast when we were dressing the background.
Wow.
And it was like one of those things we had to think about, like, okay, if I use this on this character, like the background, then will I ever want to use it on a cast? Because you don't even have the scripts, for all 8 episodes, right? So it was really about like, picking and choosing like visually like what I cannot imagine like our characters wearing, right? So, and there was obviously certain things which I knew that I want to try on the characters because we had to do rentals on this one. Like that's the one thing which we don't do on When Calls the Heart. We don't really do rentals because the clothes which we need, they don't really exist in the rental houses in Vancouver, right? So But for 1874, we had to do the rentals, and the rental place we can use, there is only one in Vancouver. Unfortunately, they sold a big chunk of their stock to the Billy the Kid. So, so that's not actually obviously available to us, and it was actually the stock which we would need for 1874. So we had to work with what was and what they still have in the stock, and there was definitely things which unfortunately they are lacking, which would be really helpful, like let's say the duster coats. Like they
Mhm.
used to have like the historically accurate duster coats,
Mhm.
but now we had to do the, let's call them little modern version ones. Yeah, but it's definitely different silhouette too, because when I talked to Hallmark and Alfonso, we discussed, like they used to wear bustles, right? Like it's basically the bustle period, right? So, but also we have different characters coming from different backgrounds, and they have different income, or they are coming from different wealth of the family. So it's everything is kind of, you know, um, yeah, like it's very thought through, like who is wearing what, why. And then obviously like we did research, and I have 32 page like a research book, which I did as my base for it. And that was actually my presentation to Alfonso too. And then I have binders of other pictures, and then I have pictures in computer, right, which basically didn't make it into book, just as a references. But the thing is, like, you don't really have pictures from this time frame or what we are doing. Like, it doesn't exist. So even if you are looking for a photo reference, like it's people who are dressed in their nines, because it would be their Sunday best, because that's what
Yes.
they would wear for the photographs, right?
Mhm.
So you have to think about, like, you don't really have anything authentic for the time frame. You cannot use the movies, because even if you do, like the movies, they are already inspired by their research and what they found, and their design choices, so they are not historically accurate already. So you have to do proper research. And when you are doing the proper research, you're trying to be like, okay, well, you're trying to see like if you can find anything which, like portraits in Canada, and we found stuff, right? So you have kind of the base. The men likely didn't change much. So you can do the research, like there's few books which we found, and they were, like they were from maybe like 1880, 90, like the pictures. But that men didn't really change, or their style didn't change, right? But we were trying to find as many pictures which we can, just as a base for 1874.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought of that because you're right. When they took pictures back then and just, the research that I've done with ancestry and stuff, it was a lot of times your wealthy people who were taking those nice pictures that you still have access to those. Or
Yeah,
like
like
you said, they're Sunday best. So you're not getting actual pictures of how they would dress just like on a normal everyday.
no, and I mean that was another thing. Like when I talked to Alfonso, like when I had an interview with him, he was like I don't know how we ended up talking about it, but like he was talking about like, oh, like a blouse look, right? And during my whole research, which I did prior to that, like there wasn't really a blouse. Like you don't really see ladies wearing a blouse and
Mhm.
skirt. Like that's something what you have later on, like let's say during Van Calls the Heart time frame, right? But you don't really have that look during 1874. So then I started researching it, and then there was actually Garibaldi blouse, which women actually wore, and that's basically what are the blouses based off of. And it's also a different cut of the blouses, and that was something what I wanted to do. Like I wanted it to be as far away from Winkles the Hard as possible,
Yeah.
you know? So, even like the layers, like they wore more layers than what we have on 1874, but from practical reasons, they probably wouldn't wear that many layers, like, but they still wouldn't change the silhouette, because that was that time, right? So So we have bustles and the skirts are cut differently, even from actually Van Close the Heart. Like when I started Van Close the Heart, like they're cut differently. They're fuller, but also like for Rebecca, like she is on a horse a lot, right? So her skirts had to be constructed that she's able to ride a horse in whatever skirt she's going to wear. Where like when we had Elizabeth's skirts, we always call them riding skirts. So we specifically put her in a riding skirt when she was riding a horse. As we're in this situation, we always have to have a skirt right now, which she's able to ride a horse, right? I mean, we were not like the story didn't go as far as that she can have non-riding skirts at
Hmm.
this moment,
Yeah.
right? Which then is a different silhouette. And then like Hattie, she's wearing a bustle too, but the skirts are like flat front and then pleated or gathered going back. And I mean, obviously the bustles were they were big, right? So we are still using like the small bustles.
Yeah.
And then for example, for Peggy, because like she's on Frontier and she has two kids. We did undergarments, but it's not a bustle. It's kind of like a series of ruffles just to give her like a nice shape. Because when you do the research, I was kind of inspired by, let's say, late 60s too. Because if you do like 1867, they didn't really do bustles, I think, as much yet. But they did like a nice bell shape, and the skirts were super full. But we are not doing the super full skirts. We are just like, scaling everything down. Because again, you are not in a city, right? So the
Yeah.
city's fashion would be different than
Absolutely.
Frontier, right?
Yeah. That's fascinating. You have a great Mountie scene at the beginning of the season, and I know you've shared before how challenging it can be to get Mountie costumes. So how did you pull that one off?
Well, the mountains were multiplied.
Yeah.
So we had 15 uniforms. And that was again one of those things like we had our Mountie and we dressed the Mounties before our Mountie. So we didn't know which uniform he's actually going to fit him because he wasn't
And you
cast.
didn't know you're going to have a 6'4" Mountie either.
So we originally actually I think we didn't even know there would be that many Mounties like originally like going back, right? And then we talked to the rental house and they are like, okay, well, I think they actually have 17 jackets, which we could rent, but one was super small, so that one was out. Like, nobody could wear that one. Like, I could probably wear it, but none of the guys could wear it.
Yeah.
So we told them that you can have 15 jackets, and then the other thing was they didn't have enough pants. So then we used like two different color pants. And at one point they said they don't have 15 pairs of boots. So it was always something. And then originally they actually used to wear a different hat, but we made a deal that we could use the Stetson hat. So,
Nice. Nice. You pulled it off. And
well, I
so,
did, but other people did.
yeah. So then we see more than one Mountie later on so far in this season. Do you rent those again? Do you hold on to a few of them? How does that work?
No, we basically held on to the one we needed for our like after the fitting.
Yeah.
I was really worried he's not going to fit one because our actor is 6'3",
Yeah,
4.
he's tall, six
And
four.
they are really different cut of the jackets. They are on a shorter side, right? Like we already have a problems with the one which Nathan is wearing. So we actually had to extend that one, and luckily it worked. There was a point when we were worried we will have to actually make him like one from scratch in like, I don't know, 2 weeks or something. And we have the fabric, which means I have to really label it because I know that in the house of fabrics, I didn't label his fabric right now. So there was only like, I don't know, there was just a little bit of fabric. I think you can just make the jacket out of it.
Yeah.
But it's not like even the fabric doesn't really exist. So I mean, now probably if we would need to order it, we could, but I think hopefully. But yeah, so like at the time, like we were kind of scrambling because we were worried that he's not going to fit the one we have, and they're really hardly, hard to alter. Like there is not the way they are built, there is not enough fabric to really work with, right? So, and then what you asked, we returned what we don't need. And obviously, I didn't know there is another Mountie coming or what his size is going to be, so we had to re-rent it. Yeah.
So was it Lachlan's idea to take the jodhpurs in on the side a little bit? Because I know that there was a great interview where Kevin asked Lachlan about the pants and not having, because we know the original ones were just like crazy wide. So how did that kind of work out?
Well, his pants, he actually asked me at one point to take them in. I think the only reason why we didn't take them in though originally was because there wasn't time.
Got it.
We just, yeah, like it's honestly like on 1874, we were shooting 1 week before Christmas. And we were supposed to like finish shooting like the first block originally before Christmas, but
Yeah.
the casting was late, so we only shot 1 week. And we kind of got most of our cast, what, like week and a half max before we went to camera?
Well,
No, like everybody was last minute. Like
yeah,
honestly,
yeah,
like
yeah.
who we could fit, we fitted right away. But again, like if you're fitting other characters, like which are not the main characters, especially for a period like this, because you're so limited in what is out there or what you can use, you really have to think like, okay, like what would you use for, number two or number one, right? Like if you have to actually use something which we already have, right? And I had certain vision or color palette for idea for each. But sometimes, unless you don't have the casting, you don't know if it's going to work. And then if you talk to actors, they might have, different ideas too. So, yeah, so it's just like, yeah, it's kind of like a big collaborative process.
Do you have, now that you've designed this season for Hope Valley 1874, is there something about designing for 1874 that you've really enjoyed that you don't necessarily get to do for When Calls the Heart?
Oh my. I don't know. I mean, like on I don't know, like for 1874 when we let's say did the fittings with our male characters, like usually like there is certain process which basically everybody does, and it doesn't matter if it's period show or if it's contemporary show, right? But like if you have the sizes of the actor, you basically pull everything in that size or their sizes in the look you kind of imagine, right?
Mm.
And you put it in basically their little spot on the costume rack, right? Like this show was more, I would say how do you call it? It wasn't improvised, but it was get the actor in and see what actually works. So it was kind of like building the character during the fitting
Hmm.
because, like we have selection of vests, but each vest is different. You have selection of pants, each pants is basically almost different, right? Like we have few multiples, but not that much. Even the rental house has few multiples, but like it was really about like, like what is going to work for the character and yeah, it was more yeah, like just creating the closet during the fitting and you know, I wouldn't call it like playing around, but kind of,
Yeah, yeah.
like making sure like what looks the best because like even when we did, let's say, the Gatsby party, I know that, we had the background and we had their sizes, but then you get them in and you realize, well, you are not the size you actually had on your paperwork, right? So then what we pulled actually doesn't work. So then we had to actually, you have to improvise and see like what looks the best. Or even like actually the for Wrinkles the Heart, it was the theater scene. That would be even better example, right? Because like you get the background performers and sometimes they're not the size they say, right? And it can create chaos. So even you pulling clothes doesn't sometimes even make sense because it can just go all poof.
Yeah, yeah. So even just the process was different, which I mean,
Oh yeah, the whole thing. Yeah, it was like yeah, like it was different because we started with dressing the background. So we actually dressed all the background for the Mountie scene first. That was actually the first fittings. The Mounties were the first fittings too, which was actually good because in a way that was taken care of, right? Even though that scene, like the shooting schedule of that scene changed, and then like even for our main guy in a Mountie scene. He was wearing a hat, and the rental house had only one size of the hat, and it was a small hat. So our actor wouldn't fit it. So we actually had to have the hat made custom. And then I had to negotiate with our rental house and be like, okay, so we need to make this hat, but we don't have the brim. So do you have a brim which we can use for this hat? Because like you cannot find those pieces, right? So
yeah,
actually it's not the brim, it's the beak because it's
got
the
it.
beak on the hat, right?
Yeah.
So we are like, okay, do you have some spare head we can steal the beak out of? And then we needed the gold trim and and then we actually ended up ordering a gold trim, but the gold trim was really gold, so I was like, oh, we can actually take the trim off the other head as well because it's easily stitched. It's not like so,
Right.
so we had to build the hat too. So that was fun.
So we are halfway through Hope Valley 1874. Is there a costume piece coming that you can tease that you're excited for us to see?
Well, there's the costume coming. It will be at the end. Um, that was a lot of work. Yeah, and finding the fabric was yeah, it was kind of challenging too.
Are we going to
Yeah,
know it when we see it? Are we going to know that's what you were talking about?
I'm sure you will know.
Okay.
It's it's the end.
Okay.
It's a
Well,
very
and both
important one.
Alfonso, both Alfonso and oh, I'm drawing a blank right now. Oh, and Mike have shared that the ending is crazy. And so we're prepared for that.
Good.
Yay! Barbara, it is always a delight to talk to you. It's just crazy to think about all that you guys, with When Calls the Heart, with Hope Valley 1874, the work that your teams put into it to bring both of those series to us. And it's always so fun to hear all the behind the scenes. And also to know that you're already buying things for season 14. So that's got to be exciting. Thanks so much for joining me. And I hope that you get a
You.
nice little break soon.
I will. I will try.
Well, best to you and bye bye.
Bye bye. Thank you.